right, everyone, welcome to our February TMAC meeting. Thank you so much for being here. Let's go ahead and start with introductions around the table. I'm Joy McMurray, TMAC Chair. Lisa Jensen, TMAC Member.
Amula, TMAC Member.
Gordon Golding, Development Services.
Joseph Gandy, Public Works.
Kehan Shur, Public Works.
Anna Sobel, Development Services.
Gord Lestro, Development Services.
Aaron Scablon, I'm here representing Bike-Walk Provo.
Gordon Haight with Engineering, Provo.
Jeff McLaughlin, a TMAC member.
David Hurtado, TMAC member.
I'm Greg McFarland, TMAC member.
Thank you. And a couple we missed.
Chapman Weaver, Clover City.
And our wonderful
Judy Johnson, Engineering, Public Works Engineering, and Bill Fillmore will be right here.
Bill will be right back.
From the council.
City Council liaison.
Yes.
We have online.
Oh, yes, and online, who have we got? Oh, and Clancy, go ahead.
Yep, Clancy Black, TMAC member online today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Clancy. Okay, I wanted to give a brief overview of our meeting before we start. We've got a great packed agenda, so I wanted to be able to pace ourselves. First, we need to approve our minutes and then have a vote on the proposed meeting schedule changes from last month. Hannah will have a sustainability presentation for us, and then we have two consequential discussions. One is discussing the bike master plan, and Jeff will help us with that, and then a review of future agenda items so that we can sketch out what our priorities are for the year. And I've asked Bill to comment particularly as our city council liaison as part of that discussion. Hopefully we'll be able to get to all of that. So first item then, approving the minutes from our January meeting. Anyone?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
They were beautiful, Judy.
They really were. Truly a work of art. Every month.
We got the attachment, Kat. I know you like through it.
Send me whatever you want to.
Thank you, Judy, for your diligence on that. Next, last meeting we discussed, there was a proposed change to move our TMAC meetings to Wednesdays at 12:30 instead of Thursdays. But Greg was not at that meeting, and since talking with Greg, that schedule does not work for him. And so I think we probably want to vote that one down, but if anyone wants to have any discussion on that. And Greg, do you want to add anything?
I mean, I guess, is there a compelling reason to move it to Wednesdays?
There was some requests, and I think as long as it works for the committee, I think they're going to be getting some more members, and just what works for you guys to go is more important that you members are able to be here. So we'll, as administration, work out other details. So
My preference would be to keep the current time.
Anyone like to make a motion in regards to that?
I will make a motion that we don't need to deny the proposal. Time for our meeting.
yeah, if you don't vote on anything, it just stays current. You could vote to eliminate it. It's an item for action. It only does vote just to not amend the agenda or amend it.
I move that we keep the Thursday meetings going forward until further notice.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. All right. Then we'll move on to our sustainability presentation. Hannah from South. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is just about the Preserving Provo campaign, thank you, which is as much from Joseph as me, if not more. He designed the beautiful handout. We'll get to it in a moment. The Preserving Provo campaign is kind of like the Provo Advantage campaign that I'm sure most of you have heard of for business and all things economic development within Provo. I think this is really a good partnership with that and with other initiatives we've been doing. The triple bottom line for sustainability, or the three-legged stool metaphor, 3 columns, Venn diagram, however you envision it. The 3 key components of sustainability are a community's economic health, their social health of individuals, and also the health of their environment. If any one of those pieces is out of balance, the community's health suffers. So we've got Provo Kindness for the social aspect, Provo Advantage for economic health, and now we've got Preserving Provo for that third environmental piece. So this is an environmentally driven aspect of sustainability, but it really is part of a systems-wide approach to community health. I'm really glad that the administration has decided to put this out. This is our first newsletter. It will come out monthly with different topics. Mind if I have the mouse for a bit? We did a big random sample survey last summer for the general plan. One of the questions was asking Provo residents, what are your priorities? What aspects of life are most important to you? And becoming a more environmentally sustainable city was the fourth most important aspect of quality of life. And it was the third highest for where they thought Provo needed to improve most. Provo's doing a lot. That to us showed that it's, one, critically important to our residents, and two, we maybe need to do a better job of getting what we are doing out there. That is the dual focus of preserving Provo. We got the mission statement here. It's to two-pronged approach, educate and empower the community so they can understand and utilize our resources, preserving our quality of life today and tomorrow. Going forward, can we make sure that next generations of Provo residents have the same quality of life that we do, if not better? So the newsletter and every approach that you'll see with preserving Provo will address those two sides. What is the city doing, and what can we help residents do so that together we can collaborate on solutions for our environment? These are the future topics that is in celebration. We'll wrap up in December with a look back at the year, addressing these other topics as we go throughout the month. This is just a long link up here, but we have the URL preservingprovo.com. So if you put that in, it'll pull this page up. This page will stay mostly the same. What's going to update here are these older topics. We've got February, we'll add March every month going down. So you can sign up for the newsletter by clicking here, add your email to the list. And if you missed any newsletters, you can go to the library here, find the archive. We're starting with air quality because in that random sample survey we did, air quality was residents' #1 environmental concern. Almost a third said that air quality was most critical for them. Recycling and Provo River were the next highest. So we will have those in future months. Hopefully people online can see that all right. I won't read every word of this. It's available online. I strongly encourage everyone to take a look at it. It's excellent work. Joseph created the document, so you know it's high quality.
It was beautiful. It was fun to read. It really was.
He did a fantastic job. So I will, of course, focus on the transportation element of air quality, since this is TMAC, but clearing up some common misconceptions. We just wanted to make sure that everyone reading this newsletter had a good foundational understanding of what we mean when we talk about air quality. Most people assume it's factories. There was a survey a few years ago where overwhelmingly people thought the majority of pollution came from factories, and homes and buildings was a small fraction. Exactly the opposite. From, I think, just a couple of years ago, 2019, 42% of our air pollution in Utah comes from mobile sources. The next highest is area sources like our homes and buildings, our gas furnaces, gas lawnmowers, things like that. Focusing on the mobile sources here, though. But this is, if we're going to take action to improve our air quality, we may as well act where we're going to have the biggest bang for our buck. And that very clearly is mobility. And you can see here, our number of unhealthy, that's orange or red, air quality days over the last few years has gone down. This is something where we know our actions have an impact. We can see the actions we're taking, literally clearing our air from year to year. Another, yeah.
Is that improvement due to weather actions taken?
Over the last few years, it's a little more volatile. We think it's source, as far as I can tell from the state data, it seems to be source emissions. In our upcoming conservation resiliency plan, we'll have a little bit more data as we look at decades over time, averaging from the 70s up to now. And it's taken a fairly steep drop. Of course, the EPA introduced a lot of emissions regulations back in the 70s and 80s around cars. And again, we know that as we pull these levers, they have effects.
I would wonder how much of it is because people didn't drive from here
And
to work.
2020 was a bit of an outlier year.
And-
Yeah.
I'm curious about what the
That was my question too. Is this okay?
Like, your data is 2017 to 2020, we haven't seen a drop. Can we count up the number in 2021 and 2022?
You can in the conservation resiliency plan.
Yeah,
We
okay.
just had limited real
Sure.
estate on this
Got it.
page, so we went to the billboard
Yeah.
statistics. But yeah,
Hannah, do we have any data to show how much of the increase is attributable to the cars on the road? Getting rid of older cars?
a
And
substantial-
secondly, how much is related to cleaner fuel?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the cleaner fuel. I know as we look decade to decade, I think most of that decrease is coming from newer cars, because we have more people driving more cars. So you'd think it would go up, but, yeah.
I forget the name of it, but there's a particular fuel, which
Mm,
what's it called?
As a tier 3.
Tier 3,
Yeah.
not mandated, but. Curious if we knew how much of an impact that.
I don't know.
Just
It'd be hard to
a
isolate
local
that.
representative,
Yeah.
never seen any numbers.
Neither have I from the state, honestly. I'm not sure, and I don't know how you'd isolate that from other driving behaviors, whether, I could see what the state has put out about that if you'd like. The other misconception to clear up is we tend to think of winter inversion because it's incredibly visible with our mountain environment as it gets trapped with the cold air down at our breathing level. But summer emissions are also a problem. Not only from wildfires coming in, especially from the west, but also from ozone, which is not visible like PM 2.5 is in the wintertime, but it is just as dangerous. I'm sure you mostly know this, but I'll just give a quick recap. Ozone is created when volatile organic compounds, VOCs, from emissions mostly from cars break down in sunlight. So hot sunny days and hot sunny times of day tend to have the worst ozone emissions. So when we're talking about air pollution, it's not just the visible wintertime smog you see as you're coming into the valley, it's year-round. I won't read the specifics of these. Most of these are city initiatives you are well aware of, but the city is really working to support active and alternative transportation efforts. Not saying that people have to give up their cars entirely, but as you can see on the resident side, one of the things you can do is drive a little less. That's carpooling, trip chaining, stringing all your trips together rather than going out to the grocery store or a different store every night. That all makes a difference, even if it's just a little bit. We're also expanding EV infrastructure because there are some emissions for the creation of the cars and the generation of the electricity they run on, but they don't emit any source pollution from the tailpipe that's coming into our communities like other cars do. On the resident side, take advantage of that active transportation, drive a little less, try some new ways of getting around. Don't idle your car. Idling your car for just 10 seconds with modern cars uses more gas than turning it off and on again. But that much of a difference. Obviously, like, don't stop at red lights or at the drive-through at McDonald's, but every opportunity you can, idle your car, or don't idle your car. It's not technically legal to stop your car at an intersection, so I can't encourage that.
This meeting is a format for me to confess all of my crimes. I don't know, I'm a jaywalker, and...
Can we get that in the minutes, please? There are things that residents can do to reduce building emissions. I'll let you skim those since it's not directly TMAC impacted, but it is part of this multi-point solution, right? We can't take a complicated systems level problem and expect that pulling one or two policy levers will clear up the whole thing, right? It's too integrated, too complicated for one simple solution. But if we can address the areas where we're going to have the biggest impact with the most reasonable efforts, we can collaborate with community partners, we can educate residents, we can change small behaviors to have big impacts. Those are the areas we should be acting, and transportation is absolutely one of those. We've got some great by the numbers. I'm sure you all know most of these, but over 100 miles of bike lanes. We have the second busiest front runner station. We gather all of that Southern transit.
Number one, is it the
Salt Lake Central, yeah. They service the airport though, so I feel like they end the, yeah.
North Temple is the busiest.
We give some additional additional resources for residents. The Provo Clean Air Toolkit was created a couple of years ago. It has some incredible resources. I strongly encourage everyone to check that out. These are all hyperlinked, so you can pull it up from there. We also have these real-time air quality monitors, which are so cool. The city has 4 of them, and then other businesses, university partners, and even private residents have others. These are the purple air monitors, and it's all aggregated on this purple site. So you can see in real time what our air quality is in any spot in the city. We have one we're putting on City Hall. We just need to find a good spot for it with the new building. And then one other that I'm going to go out and fix next week. But these are real-time data. You can watch them change, the averages over time. What was that, sorry?
How can 0 and 19 be next to each other?
Because 0 is probably malfunctioning, and I should go check it out, but it's not one of the cities, so I can't.
Well, 19 is
Yeah,
closer to Geneva Road.
it also looks like this was put right in an emissions sink. You don't typically want to put them, no, it's functioning. You don't typically want to put them in areas that are right next to transit, because then they're getting a high amount of smog and that's throwing off your reading, or like right behind trees or in a park, because that's a smog sink, it'll throw your reading the other way. In this big open area, it looks like this might be in a smog sink. But it is showing some emissions. Looks like it peaked on the evening of Valentine's Day, which is, I think, what everyone would expect, right?
All the cars in that field.
So this is just a fun tool, or if we're having bad inversion days, if you get an alert from the state we're having a red air quality day, you can go check out specifically what's going on in your neighborhood.
You know where Provo has their, like if the news is saying bad air quality for Provo, where they get that stuff from the airport?
Normally it comes from the state. They have a whole bunch of monitoring systems, and they're the ones that put out whether it's a red day or a yellow day. Provo Elementary School, I don't know if everyone knows this, has a flag system where they raise the different color of flag or hang it in the window for the air quality, so kids know if it's a good day to go outside and play, or if it's a bad day and they should maybe stay a little more indoors. This is just a quick rundown of the Preserving Provo campaign. I encourage everyone to sign up for the newsletter. We'll have other months. I won't come and present on those, but great info. You get to see more of Joseph's handiwork. Who doesn't love that? For the February air quality content we've discussed, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Did the city ever adopt?
It's in the works right now. It's almost done. We hope to bring it to Planning Commission around the end of next month, tentatively. I would also, there's a mobility chapter that I think TMAC should take a look at. I'll try to bring that to one of your next meetings. Of course, yes. I'd like to get your impact or your input on that.
Beck, I really liked the action items that were listed as part of the newsletter.
Oh,
Joseph, I really
yeah,
liked that. So what you can do section, take the challenge. Yeah, that was really fun. And secondly, it's going back up. Just, I know this isn't strictly transportation related, but the 17% that is the point, do we have, is that pretty evenly spread around with various sources, or are there a couple major contributors to that?
Most of those are not in Utah County.
Okay.
So they do affect our regional air quality, but I don't know specifically. In Provo, our point source is fairly low. We don't have much heavy industrial or mining. Those are the 2 major contributors.
This is statewide.
This data is statewide. We don't have any way to break this down for Provo.
I think this is a fabulous handout with a lot of good information. One thing I did note is that it seems like you're showing a transit vehicle as the non-road source, which it's true. The diesel are that, but it's not the biggest thing in that bucket. And I don't want to put out the message that Front Runner is a pollution source. It tends to remove a lot of cars.
Yeah.
And so having like a construction truck or something like that might be more appropriate. But it's a very minor issue. It's a good handout.
I have 3 questions. Yeah. On the, when you're talking about solar, you give the link for them to, you say go to, it's up,
Oh,
it's on what the city's doing, Share
Yeah.
Solar.
Mhm.
Check out renewchoice.com. Is that also in the one that had a live link at the bottom for people to go to?
there is a Renew Choice link down there.
Okay, I didn't see it, so I didn't know if maybe verbally it was expressed differently, but that would be something where if you want someone to get excited about the idea, maybe having a live link for that would be helpful. It's up in number 1 too, check out renewchoice.com.
Mm-hmm. Any
Oh,
other?
I know what it was.
Yeah.
How are you gonna get the word out that this newsletter exists? Because that's always, like, just knowing it's on the city website, that helps 12 of us, but
Yeah.
how do we tell the people in this, all the people surveyed, and is there like some sort of a publicity, something that'll go out saying,
There
hey, we're
is.
working on this?
The mayor's PIO team is working on that, to put things out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, newsletter, to let people know that they can sign up for this campaign to get the newsletter.
The mayor has, pushed it out in, the city before, and we're planning on putting more. Release some of the content that we've pushed here and then push people to subscribe. That's the biggest thing, is trying to get people to subscribe to
This is something you could even put like on city Instagram feeds too, each of those pages could just go through and you'll get a different audience probably. How's that?
Feedback is so talented. You get editing help, you get strategic
No, this is great.
help. More than you were. Thank you. I will give you more advice than you wanted. No,
It's a diverse group of different talents, and you guys really do incredible work. How people get around within our city is vitally important to every aspect of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental. So thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's also, okay. Let's go ahead and move ahead. Bike master plan discussion. I'll give a little background on that. So last time as we were discussing the Carnival bike route, it was mentioned that we have a bike plan, which in all my years on TMAC, I hadn't heard of that. I didn't know. And it turns out it was made in 2013, so it's 10 years old. And part of TMAC's job is to evaluate the transportation-related plans that Provo has. And so I think it's time for us to say, what do we do with this bike plan? And we have a lot of options. We can recommend, we can leave it alone. We can recommend that it have a minor update or a major update. We can recommend that it be expanded into an active transportation plan. We could recommend that it be absorbed into the next iteration of the transportation master plan. There are many things we could recommend to the council that we could do. We are not the ones who write the plan, but we could certainly give input on what we think should happen with the plan. So that's the question. What do we do with this 10-year-old bicycle master plan? As part of that, if you didn't have time to read all 75 pages of it in the 2 days or few days that you had, Jeff is going to, our TMAC Vice Chair, will give us a brief overview, and then we can begin that discussion. We especially welcome Aaron Scavland being here today as our Bike Walk program representative, who knows so much, and we welcome your input as well.
So Joy,
Yes.
thanks to Aaron, we noticed that the PDF that I sent out to all the members,
Yeah,
for whatever reason, it showed 70-something pages,
it wasn't actually.
but the bike master plan is like more than 170 pages.
It used to be divided on 2 parts on
So
mine,
there's
that's
2
right.
parts of it, looks like it, yeah.
We combined.
So there's even more reading we missed.
Yep.
Oh,
man.
So
A
lot
of good stuff is at the end.
70-something pages of it.
The second
Okay.
half has all the maps and everything else.
Okay.
And specific recommendations for implementation of the plan with maps. Yeah, that's the most important part of the plan.
Right.
And that was missing, unfortunately.
Okay, well, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and present what you had access to?
Oh, I didn't pull it up off of the link, I pulled it up, I got all 100 and something
Okay,
pages.
great.
Then you have the right one.
Good.
I agree that the back half is much more useful to us than the front half.
And thanks to Jeff for taking the time to put that together.
Yeah, this is my 48 hours notice version of the presentation. So if we just go back up to the table of contents really quickly, the headings will give us a good point of just saying some things that we want to notice. By way to remind everybody, this came out in 2013, so the general plan they were working on at the time was 2011. And so things are going to be different for the, in current documents. The current transportation master plan does call out the bike plan, though, in chapter 5, which is all about active transportation. It just kind of puts it in there in one paragraph that says, oh, by the way, there's a bike master plan and it's good. And then that's all, pretty much all it says about it. Although the goal in the transportation master plan says that we want to encourage more bike, walk, and other forms of transportation in the city. 1 and 2, we're just going to go past those because that's all just introduction, just all introduction, a lot of introduction, existing plans and all that other sort of stuff. A lot of this plan gets to be kind of out of date, and I think we'll see that when it talks about the upcoming BRT.
Yeah.
Right, so what options are for there. Bulldog Boulevard, back when it was still Bulldog, the ideas for things that are going to happen there, bike lanes that they want to see put in. I think that's a good probable location to do updates, at least on the plan, is to say, you know, even if 1 and 2 kind of stay the same because it is all just explanatory, maybe 3, where it says the summary of existing conditions, could stand for a lot of update, because I know, thanks to advocates and the city, there actually has been a lot done in the past 10 years to improve the bicycling facilities and the active transportation network in Provo. But I know I saw with a little bit of sadness, they wanted, the 2013 plan asks for us to be bicycle gold by 2020. That's the year we were supposed to put in the application. And was it 2021 we were awarded silver? Something like that.
That's still progress.
Yeah, it's great progress. It's wonderful. It's just, love to. It wasn't what we said we would do. Yeah, well, yeah, didn't follow the plan that we were hoping for.
Actually, we were already silver.
Oh, we were already silver back then?
We applied in 2021 and we were granted silver.
Awarded silver.
No,
yeah.
gold.
Which is telling.
Gotcha. So, thank you for that clarification. I thought we were silver before then, but I wasn't sure. All right, one of the biggest and best parts of this plan, as we scroll down, is section 5, where it talks about.
What page?
It starts on 71. I was still going through the contents, but it starts on 71. But if you're in 5, that's great, because 5 has a lot of the stuff that would be worth looking at today as well. And let me look at the list of figures, because it was a figure in particular that I had. Right. So they talk about.
71 of the document or 71 of the PDF?
I'm looking at the document. I'm not the PDF page numbers, but the document page numbers. There is figure 5.9. And I clicked on 5.9, it took me to 5.8. It's basically, it's talking about spot improvements, and there's a whole long list of spot improvements. And I feel like this map would be something good to have updated as well. Document page number 111. I mean, it's just chock full of recommendations. Can't go through each one individually, but this gives a good overview. There's a few in North Provo, but then down south, you'll see all of the different conflict points. The current transportation master plan outlines some conflict points, safety concern areas for pedestrians, concern areas for cyclists, concern areas for vehicles, and shows different hotspots. But this bike plan has concrete ideas, which is nice, and I feel like that's something that we could look for as we go along with the discussion and take it forward, is maybe some more concrete improvements. And then in the document above this, they'll also talk about connection gaps, whether that's at an intersection across an area less than a quarter mile, between a quarter mile and a mile, or more than a mile. So they have different gap definitions for those different sizes. And of course, this is from 10 years ago, but a lot of those are still gaps in the network. We've done a great job in getting some things done, but there are still a long way to go. So I guess the takeaway that I took from reviewing the entire bicycle master plan is, if you want to focus on anything in the master plan, look at these tables that talk about improvements they suggest for connections or for spots. And then if you scroll down till when the pages start turning red, a lot of like, yeah, the PDF will have that at 163 on the PDF. Well, slightly different numbering on yours. Yours past it. Sorry, on the PDF number 163. But you see how it's got the red headers instead? Because this is prepared by it says Alta Planning and Design. It's an appendix to the Bike Master Plan, and it gives a lot of good information about design possibilities. Little diagrams that show bike lanes in conjunction with parking protected, barrier separated, buffered bike lanes, all that kind of stuff. It's nice to have included. I don't feel that it's easy to find this sort of stuff recommended on the city website anywhere. I know that specific cross-section design is not, that's for a different document. You know, like the city has other documents that talk about specific cross-sections that they want, but this will be great to kind of inform us and the public to have it out there. And I think giving it a refresh and an update and getting it in the public eye would probably be nice. This last section will have, I mean, the principles still apply. So this last section doesn't look like it needs a ton. The biggest thing on the plan is to say, what did we do in the past 10 years? Have like a kind of retrospective. What did we do and what's new and what's on the radar? I feel like the master plan is good. I would like to see it updated personally based on my review. I don't know, is there anything you want to ask me about is there a part of the master plan that has X, Y, or Z?
I just had some questions about who owns it? Currently, who's guided by it?
So it's part of the transportation master plan. Is that what you're asking, or?
Well, there's a reference to a steering committee, a list of people who form that steering committee. Is the steering committee functioning? Is the steering committee
I think they just
owns this plan?
I think they just created the plan and then it was dissolved once the plan was adopted. So the steering committee was just to do the plan.
Okay.
So when I was reading the document, there's no group that came out of that. It was just a group to create it.
So my initial impression is that it was a terrific work, and a lot of work. And like a lot of plans, it's dropped in a hopper somewhere. Unless someone owns it and takes it and follows up on it, then the planning is all for naught. And so the fundamental question for me is, if we're going to do something with this, I'd like to know who's going to have it, who's going to own it, who's going to follow up on it, so that in 10 years, a TMAC or whoever else picks this up and say, gee, what was done? And rather than us sitting around thinking, gosh, 10 years of, we didn't even know about it. So to me, that's a fundamental question of any plan. I don't want to see us or anyone else exercise a lot of effort putting a plan together that never sees the light of day there.
I don't see it on the end. Is it currently posted on the website, this plan, in any form?
Yes.
Yes, on the code website as well.
On the what?
Code website and the city website.
And it's a beautiful first Google result if you type in Provo bike, which
I'll go that way.
which a lot of Provo City documents, that is not the way to find them. You can find the bike master plan if you do it that way.
So just to kind of address, I think that is a paramount point. If you do a plan, how do you make sure it gets used? And so I don't have a lot of history because I just came in last year, but what I can tell you we did do as we had new capital projects come up, then we referenced it. So we didn't like go to the plan to implement it, and maybe that's what you're asking, but we did look at it to say, what does the plan kind of say? And in some cases, it was outdated, but you know, where we want to put bike lanes down certain roads and things like that. But I think, so in a sense, we're using it, but we're not maybe using the sense that you're thinking we should necessarily. But I'm saying that's the level we're using it right now. If we have a project, we'll look at it.
Well, no, the top Google link is to MAG's website, and they are hosting this.
Maybe that's,
But it is in the Provo City codes, but yeah.
I wanted to just add to what Gordon and Jim had said. As we talk about the bike plan, one question is, oh, what are the ways it needs to be updated? Let's add scooters, let's add e-bikes, let's take out the projects that have been completed. But there's also a strategic component to it to say, how can we use this plan in a way that it will actually see the light of day? That how do we connect it with funding? How do we connect it with someone who's going to look at it and implement it in some way? Is that us? Is it some other way? So those are two things we're looking at simultaneously, is the technical aspects and then the strategic aspects of what we want to do with this.
I love looking through it because what Gordon said, I feel like it was clear that it had been referenced over the years because almost everything that we've talked about bike related since I've been on this committee was addressed in that plan. Like it was something that somebody said needed to be done. So I could tell the engineering had said, all right, we're going to redo these roads. And just like it said in the bike plan, we need to, when roads come up for repair or on schedule or when funding is available, make sure these projects happen. So you can tell that it's been used, but more as a reference document than a guiding document. So I think that's, if we wanted to change the energy of it, that's probably something to look at. Yeah.
So then the question is, do we make it part of a guiding document, or how do we?
I felt like it kind of was because the transportation master plan refers to it, and also the goals for in chapter 5 of the transportation master plan aligned with this. It wasn't like it was, they hadn't done their homework, you know, and so they corresponded. It just, this document is just obviously bigger, more inclusive.
This document is a general plan policy appendice, so it is a guiding document for the city at large.
So I'd say two things, maybe back to your point. So we as staff use as a reference document. What it doesn't have, and this is maybe what you're trying to get to, if something has a funding source, then you implement a phase independent of a project that's coming in. So for example, if a developer comes in with a project, we'll have them correspond with these documents. Or if the city or if UDOT's doing a project, or if we get MAG money, we'll correspond. But we don't specifically look at projects recommended in this and say, each year we're going to do X number of dollars of these projects. So it's, so there's two ways of looking at it. If you're going to give it a designated funding source, or if you're going to use it as it comes to a point. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I think that, yeah, it's good to know that it's been referred to. But I had the impression, and I didn't read every word of it, but I did look at it, that plan is to be a guiding document. And that suggests to me that it's more than something we refer to. It's something that guides decision-making, guides funding, and thus moves the ball forward more dramatically than perhaps it has been moved forward in the last 10 years. And that would dovetail, it seems to me, very well with what we just heard about on sustainability. So I guess what I would advocate is that if we move forward with this, and I think we should, that it be updated, yes, but that we think very strategically about how it becomes a more guiding document than it has been. Someone, something owns this, and
Would you like to say something
I
about
was
it?
document, one group that owned it was Bike Walk Provo, or our earlier iterations as Provo Bicycle Committee, and Provo, and now Bike Walk Provo. I think the way that we've evolved suggests how this document needs to evolve as well. We owned it, and we constantly referenced it to push the city
Okay, can you hear me? I think you guys lost audio in the room.
If Clancy needs to talk, we could give it to him.
No,
You worked really hard. Been great to see you.
I don't have to leave in 5 minutes. I get to sit here the whole time. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think it's really important to look back and say we're developing these plans, the planning commission, city council, to have this emotion into our plans. I think if you don't do that, the plans will easily die. They'll sit on a shelf. Engineering plans generally go that way, but the planning department did this, so that's why it's good. Anyway, so what we're saying is, even if we don't implement everything, the fact that we're going to use it for each project, that is a huge benefit. Now, the second part of actually funding it, that's a policy that this group isn't going to make, but what I do want to have happen is have that still visionary plan that people, when they look at it, it helps promote the funding for it. So even if it's not, I'd rather give them a plan that would invigorate you to want to fund it, to give it that priority and do the phasing and do all that. So I'm not against the funding, but I'm also telling you that's got to be a policy, because guess what? There's going to be a really great water plan. They're boring, but storm drain plan, they got to fund. There's going to be garbage collection and everything else they got to fund that's going to compete. And garbage collection plans aren't that great either, but the city council feels strongly about them. So we're going to fund these things in a priority with everything else. It competes, but let it compete with a really good head of steam, and that's kind of my vision of it.
And I would absolutely agree with that. But the thing that I note is that, I think what is being observed here as well, is that when the plan is effectively owned by a non-city entity, and that group needs to lobby, as it were, and persuade as best it can the city to listen. And so unless there is someone in the city, or there is someone or some group like this group that has the mandate to recommend to city council that the plan be heard and followed, then what we're likely to get in the next 10 years is exactly what we got in the past 10 years, is a group that is passionate but can't get its voice heard. And so what I would, and this is just my view of any plan that any organization adopts, is that the plan capture the imagination of the group, but that the plan have legs. And that can only have legs if there's someone or some ones who are saying, this is ours, and we're going to follow up on it. So otherwise, passion won't go very far.
Yeah, if I may say, the very fact that Joy's been on TMAC for several years and didn't know that there was a bicycle master plan is telling. And once this...
You can fire me.
No. But this is a systemic problem, right? Once this plan was approved by the city council in 2014, from the get-go, I was at these meetings, not as a TMAC member, but just there. Periodically, they would say, oh, we need to, every 6 months, we need to talk about TMAC. But it was not built into the plan, and it never really systematically happened. Every once in a while, we would say, hey, TMAC needs to talk about the bicycle master plan. So we would be invited, one of our representatives would be invited to talk about it, but it wasn't happening. It wasn't being evaluated and assessed and talked about on a regular basis. Yeah. And that has led to the problems. I think I'm glad we had a plan. I think it's been wonderful. We've implemented a lot more than Orem City has. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty low bar.
It's a great plan. It's a great plan. I'm just talking about the future, not the plan.
So again, like I said, I was able to look up this plan after just 2 or 3 months of being here. But then when Joy said, hey, I want to talk about bike plan, and she didn't have this plan, I thought, oh, this is something that should be in the possession of all TMAC. And so immediately we emailed this out last week and said, read it all in 2 days. No, what we said is, in fact, we ought to be giving you the transportation master plan, all the trail plan. So we started talking about that. we have some more plans we ought to start sending you so that it's,
Sorry, everyone.
this was Joy's fault, so anybody, I did blame her in we had a meeting earlier this week, and so we did accuse her of that. So what we're gonna do is make sure that all TMAC members have in their possession all the plans related to transportation. So when Joseph and Hannah were working on this air quality, that really comes right back. So we thought this ought to come to you. We ought to, anything related to what your purview is, we ought to be hitting you up hard with those things. So,
Okay, Clancy, we're so glad you can hopefully hear us now.
Yeah.
Feel free to chime in on this. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, just one thought I want to add before I have to go is that obviously this was incorrect, but I assumed that the active transportation portion of the transportation master plan sort of superseded or adopted or incorporated everything from the bicycle plan. And that was probably an incorrect assumption. But whatever we do decide to do, we should take that into account, make sure it's clear what each plan accounts for and how it should be used.
and I think that's a good point. What you need to know is by state statute, our guiding document is our general plan. Any plan we do is a subset of that. But I think it's important when we do like the transportation master plan, that could literally be an appendage to it. And when we do our active transportation or bike plan, whatever we end up doing, it should be an appendage to the transportation master plan. It's an appendix, and so it lists it there, so it's integrated as part of the plan. Now, the City Council just adopted a general plan 2-3 months ago or sometime. So everything we do needs to support that plan, and that's the plan that governs. That's our Bible. That's how we run the city. That document.
The general plan.
The general plan, and then the transportation master plan should support that document, and that's how we'll run transportation. The same with the water master plan, the sewer master plan, every other master plan, the parks master plan. They're all a subset of that general plan, and so as they do that plan, yeah.
So in answer to the question, or in answer to what Clancy said, who's now gone, does the bike plan support the master transportation plan and the master transportation plan? Like, is it a 3-tier thing? We got general plan, yeah. Or is the bike plan and the master transportation plan, are they on even just supporting the general plan?
No, the transportation plan, the reason this is going to be a higher document than the bike plan is this also goes into our impact fees, capital facilities, money. This is how money is spent. So you do want to integrate your bike plan. This is.
But the bike plan is an appendage to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what,
It doesn't have its own funding source. This is codified in state documents. We have to have. Bike plan has a lesser status. The master plan has the highest status.
Right. That's why I wanted to know if they were on even footing or if they were.
But if you incorporate it in this plan, it's going to be part of that.
I feel like they mesh really well.
They do.
It's just obviously the bike plan has way more details that we need to make sure people are addressing.
And we don't want all that detail in here necessarily.
Exactly.
We want to
I
make
just
sure.
love that.
So that's why I believe it needs to be a standalone plan. That's my recommendation.
so what, yeah, I guess that was my follow-on question. What is the virtue of having a standalone bike plan rather than a more robust bicycle treatment?
You're 160 pages with your bike plan.
But does it need to be 160 pages? That's my question. I mean,
I won't answer that question, but this transportation plan is 150 pages. And so even if you start getting 200-300 page documents, I'm not going to do a good job with it. I need to go to the general plan and just look at what I need to see there. Then I need to reference down the list. I can't.
That's my other observation I was going to make, is that terrific plan, but it's too much. If you really want to make progress, it seems to me, I mean, to have a 170-page document, who's going to read it?
well, especially because most of this is just images that can be pulled from the NACDO City Street Design Guide.
So it could
Right.
be.
If it's going to be a guiding document, it seems to me this gets maybe into the weeds on this update, is that it needs to be focused in a way and that really identifies things that are going to, we really want to get done, and are going to capture attention of decision makers in the city. Because, you know, if it takes, I don't know how many hours it takes to go through this in detail,
I was looking for a
it's
shorter.
not going to happen.
Better.
I kind of feel like that's what the transportation master plan did though, is that it took all the good stuff in here and said, all right, what are our biggest things that we need? And I feel like chapter 5 of the transportation plan didn't give me anything new that wasn't in here.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's good to have the detail because then you don't have to go to the other websites.
So what I can
and
say
find that.
is the transportation master plan was guided by that document.
Right.
So, and that's what you wanted. See, that was more detailed. This is more general. And I want that to be more detailed. But again, I'm with you.
Cut a little
I'm an
bit.
engineer because I didn't like to read. I didn't like to write. So shorter pages, smaller is the way to go.
People keep telling my students they should be engineers because they don't want to write. Like,
It's not true.
It's, yeah.
I know you're right. I just
Everybody right?
Go make your history.
Dave, have you been waiting to, would you like to add to this?
Oh, I thought I had a comment earlier, but it would have gone up in the weeds anyway.
I think the question I want, like, there are a lot of obviously very specific projects that are in this plan. How many of them have been built? How many of them are not going to be built? How many of them we still want to build, but we want to get there? And then there are these program recommendations, like, do we need a bicycle coordinator? Do we need a website? Do we need, like, and I would like to see us think about, and Provo City think about, like, okay, what recommendations are in this bike master plan that we have either decided we're not going to do, or still want to do, or have ignored to this point?
I think that would
Is
be
that
a
a-
job for a steering committee
Sure.
who is in charge of revising the plan,
Yeah.
right? I don't think that's going to be a TMAC. I don't think we have the time to go
No,
into that level of
absolutely
detail.
I want to see the results from this.
I do too. I have, so when I was going through it, I have a list of like 10 questions. I'm going to ask Aaron about this one, and then, was this done or was this not? It sounds like, kind of pull together what we've talked about here, so we have time to get to our last agenda item. It sounds like Gordon recommends we keep the standalone plan, but yes, revise it. Bill, did you want, I should have asked you to.
Yeah, I've been listening. It's a very interesting discussion, and I appreciate all the input. I know many of you, Aaron in particular, are very passionate about this, very articulate. But I think the clarifying point for all of you, just to make sure we're totally clear, because we keep talking about, is it a guiding document or is it what? The general plan is required by state law. We have to have a general plan, but it's not prescriptive. That is, it's not commanding us to do things. It's aspirational in nature. And so any subset of the general plan is likewise aspirational. So there are a lot of good ideas in the bike plan, but it's not law. It's not an ordinance, and it's not budgeted. So we've got a ways to go. And so this group needs to decide what recommendations do you want to make, drawing from that plan. Are there, do you have like top 3, top 5 priorities that you really want the city council to focus on? And then in the end, everything boils down to a cost-benefit analysis. I mean, the city has necessity and limited budget. We have huge demands from every corner of the city to use it for different things. So in the end, the city council, the legislature for the city has to decide, benefit outweigh the cost on this measured against other things. It was a very pragmatic thing, whereas, you know, the total plan is aspirational. It's ideal. But in the end, we're not in the position of bringing you under Abraham Smoot. We can't lay out a new grid for the city. We have a fixed infrastructure. And that means if we do extensive remodeling of roads, that has a pretty high price tag. And so we simply have to, again, weigh the cost versus the benefit. And that's, it's painful, reality.
One option you also would have to discussion among the members would be whether to recommend a RFP goes out to have a professional group analyze the plan and then inform that with your steering committee, whatever process you desire.
I would be happy to look at it.
Alpha did a great job. I think there is merit in having an outside organization come in and having their kind of credibility tell the city what to do. But you've got users, people who experience these streets every day, day in and day out. People on bikes, people on scooters, people walking. You've got the expertise here. I think those people should be, I don't know if there's a way to compensate them, but their time should be respected. They should, but I don't think we need to spend, I don't know, what would this cost, Davin? A lot of money, right? For Alpha.
$1,000.
Yeah.
$100,000.
And because actually, and they, as a part of their process, they would ask for public input, they would involve us, but there would be stuff missing. We as a active everybody walks. I wish everybody would walk, but we as a community have the knowledge, and there are people willing to dedicate the time to provide specific recommendations to create what really needs to happen, and that is a robust, seamless network so that people can walk and bike and scoot to the destinations that they want to get to. And this is fundamentally about our quality of life. And so I don't think it's necessary to pay a consultant to do this. I mean, we may want to get their specific advice about a particular aspect of it, right? Certain specific treatments that maybe the Public Works may not know exactly how to, apply to this, but I don't think we need to do this for the plan itself. I don't know Greg, what your thoughts would be.
I mean, my sense is I don't want to ask that the city undertake a new plan before we've done some kind of just basic scorecard on what we've done with the old one. I think that's the first step. And I don't know if that's city staff or a steering community that, like Joy was saying, stakeholders. But let's just go through the plan and sit down. What did we do? What did we not do? And what of the things we didn't do? Was it a budget limitation? Was it an attention limitation? Was it just we didn't care or didn't want to do it when we put it in the plan?
And what does the network look like right now?
Yeah.
Can Jeff get safely from his house to his son's school?
I think that's the second step, right? I want to evaluate what have we done in this plan, and then say, okay, what is the next step? How can we complete the network? What are what of the things that have not been done in the plan could we do quickly to work towards that goal?
So maybe to answer all the two questions, one is the general plan started with the consultant. They did a whole thing. Then the city felt like the consultant didn't really represent well the city. So the city staff rewrote the master plan. And they did a good job, but they didn't get sleep. They had a lot of caffeine and they're fine, we think. Withdrawals, they all have little twitches, but we're good with that. It's those guys. So I'm just saying there's the pros and cons, and I think that's a decision we can wrestle through. The second piece is the evaluation of the plan. I think it's really important to see what we did, and the next step is why did we do it? Why? And that will help us refine the things we'll do in the future, because we're going to do the same things in the past. So I think if we were to look and say, this is where we were 10 years ago, which will be kind of fun, and then say, look, we did this, this, and this, and then attribute to a reason we did it. Why did we do some of those things? And I think that's going to help the council see a pattern of what we accomplished and how those things got done, and what things didn't get done that we wanted to get done. And maybe then there needs to be some thought to that. But I suspect if we were to do a plan today, we would accomplish a similar type projects that we did the last 10 years going forward, unless we change something up. And so if there's something we want to do more, we need to identify that and say, this might need a change. but that's later on down the path. That's part 2.
Okay, I feel like the existing plan is a great framework that would be really easy for us to do in 3 steps. First, review what's been done, what can we reduce, how can we condense it, and don't need to invite professionals besides the ones who walk the path. Like, I really feel like there's so much good stuff in this plan that I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel this time around. It's not like a general plan that's so out of date and, you know, the vision is different. I feel like it's all there. So that would be, if I were to make a motion, I would say, let's have 4 people get together in a room with city engineer and a planning department person and talk about what's been done. And then the second part is that this plan, or maybe it was chapter 5 of the transportation master plan, but one of them actually has prioritized tiered goals, like tier 1A, tier 1B, 2A, 2B. And I feel like if there were somebody that were tasked with this plan, reviewing it regularly, if it wasn't TMAC, if it was a city person that was in charge of it, that would be the logical, all right, it's 2023. We're going to look at 1A and see what needs to be done. And then when you go to the budget request for the city council, you've got this is our highest priority, and this is what you've got numbers. The work's already been done. It's there in writing. We just sort of need to sift through it and use it wisely. And so if we can take what's out of date now and bring it up to date with pretty much the same plan, and then approach it with that action idea of, all right, here's what the plan says. This year, we're going to ask the city council for this much money to get these ones will fall within the engineering road restructuring, so those will get paid for. This one will fall in that development that's happening, and we really only need to ask for this much money. I feel like it will look like less of an ask with the city council, because a lot of what the plan asks for comes from budget that's already there, and we don't. So maybe nothing more is happening, but we just feel like we're doing it in a more organized way. And just, to me, it doesn't seem huge. It seems like a lot of reading, a lot of sifting, a lot of like understanding, but it doesn't seem like a huge shift to just do this that much more efficiently. That was my,
Thank you.
Let me second your motion with the caveat. I don't think it's a good idea to hire another consultant for 2 reasons. One is you're just going to kick the can down the road another year or 2. Second is that it's going to cost money. And the third is we have a lot of expertise here in public works as it is. And there may be some specialized studies that get required later, but not an overall study. Probably I suggest is just make sure your committee of 3 or 4, whatever it is balanced. For example, and Eric, I hope you won't take this personal, but you wouldn't want to have 4 Aaron Scablins on that committee recommendation. You've got to have
At least 1, but not
right.
4. I'm going to agree with
you. You've got to have balance. And you've got to be pragmatic.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you got to be practical, and out of that, I would hope you'd come up with, 2 or 3 high recommendations, but try not to camel all at once.
right, we really have to evaluate those holes that are the absolute most important to fill.
So I think what I would suggest is this group would recommend this action to, so staff, we won't necessarily do it as a result of this committee. So we're looking for you to formulate a good idea to recommend, because it does take a significant amount of staff time, and we would have to balance it with other things we're doing if we know we're going to do this. So I'm not against it. I'm totally for it, but I'm just letting you know you're the recommendation. And if it gets up to the administration starts telling us to do that, we would do it.
I'm going to recommend that we, I don't feel ready today to have a motion and vote on it.
We don't have a motion on those.
We don't, I mean, it's not on the agenda, we can't anyway. So I'm going to, I think this has been a really great discussion today, and with excellent input all around. I'm going to propose that we continue this till next time, and maybe put an action item on our agenda for next time, that we will have a motion and vote on a recommendation regarding the bike plan to the city council. And that will give us time next time to kind of discuss more. Do we want to go with the steering committee route? If so, how many, who's on it? What do we want to say? I don't think we have time to discuss those details today. Is that all right with everybody?
And the last piece of this is really critical, and that is the public outreach.
Okay.
We got to make sure, and I'd like to hire somebody for that, because of all the posters you have to make, but we need to make that a critical element. So this group can think about it, but at some point, we got to take the show on the road, and we got to go to all the community councils, and we got to show everybody what we're doing, why we're doing it, get a good bunch of feedback to make sure we're not missing anything, and let every stakeholder have a shot at it. Make sure we know we've refined it and taken our beating.
And you want to get
One other thing that hasn't been mentioned, I mean, e-bikes and scooters and whatnot have been mentioned, and walkability, but I think safe routes to school. That's the most important walkability element, and it needs to be a fundamental part of this plan. Because if we're going to change this community and this world, and I don't think that's too grand of a statement, given the stakes, it's going to start with young people and helping them develop the habits and making it safe for them to walk and bike and scoot to school. And it's about their physical and mental health, and it's about the social fabric of our community. So I think safe route needs to be, I don't think it's even mentioned in the current plan, because it was a bicycle master plan, but even in the active transportation part of the transportation plan, I don't think school walkability, K through 12 or BYU is mentioned at all. And and then obviously BYU needs to be a fundamental part of this conversation, because they're the biggest employer, the biggest community magnet in this county, right? And the hospital as well is number 2.
They have like a 70% walk and bike share.
Yeah.
Like more people come to BYU walking and biking than by any.
But that's by accident.
That's by accident.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's not because BYU's been,
No, not because.
they've done very little, actually.
Well, and we also have, Provo School District has made the choice to have small walkable neighborhood schools. And so our state is their aspiration. And so our children, we want them to keep them safe, of course, and they're biking, walking.
In that regard, your ad hoc committee may want to consider a minor amendment to the bike walk plan, which is to add that focus on safe school routes. If it's not in there now, it's worth emphasizing.
There was a chart somewhere that was like what percentage of children bike and walk. There was an aspect in there somewhere that I read, but I don't know exactly how much. It does get mentioned somewhere, but not enough to really flashing lights. And I will, to echo what Erin says, I love, my favorite part of the whole thing was the steering committee vision they had at the very beginning in the bike walk and the bike plan, where they talked about how biking brings this great quality of life and health to the community for transportation and recreation, and it's all true, and it's really important. So I'm glad we're taking time to talk about this. We only have about 9 minutes left today, but I wanted to make sure we introduce a second discussion. That was our big first discussion. It's been introduced. We can continue it next time. Bill kindly prepared today to talk with us about our second item, which is Jeff and I have been talking about TMAC and our direction, and we want to make sure that we are being proactive and not just reactive into the things that come up on the agendas every month. We want to have a vision for what are a clear understanding, what's the most important things that we should be working on this year. And so in preparation for that, we will just work on that more next time. We would love your input in saying, okay, what are our top agenda items that we should be working on this year? We've brought it up a few times, but I want to start really narrowing it down. I included on this handout down here, here's the duties of TMAC as a refresher in case you're wondering what is it that we should be doing. But our big job is to advise the city council and the things they need us to advise them on related to transportation. So Bill made a list of 6 things and I'll let him speak to those, but his understanding of what the city council might appreciate our help on. And if there's time, Beth can add. He's spoken to some city council members as well, and he can add what they've had to say.
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't think time permits a discussion today, but Joy has asked me to highlight, at least from my perspective, what's top of mind with the city council these days on transportation issues. Let me just run through those. I think you all have a copy of this.
Yeah.
First is calming measures on West Center downtown. There's a lot of talk about different alternatives. turn into a pedestrian mall even, no through traffic at all? Or do we do some things to narrow it down to one lane on each side and make it more pedestrian, more bike friendly? We do that, then that leads to the second thing. So you can calm traffic in a variety of ways, right? You can get rid of lanes, you can put in speed bumps and all kinds of other things. But where does the traffic go if you're discouraging it from, you're either sending it faster through a smaller funnel, or you've got to give an alternative. And so the basic alternative is first north. First north would be an east-west route to get to I-15, and thereby limit traffic, congestion and speed and whatever in that retail area and make downtown more pedestrian friendly. So I know that Gordon and his people here have been in the middle of trying to evaluate different options, but that's high on our mind. Second one is, the second one is 100 North, and so that blends into that. My understanding is there's not much needed to be done to 100 North to make it more of a thoroughfare. It's more a matter of education and routing traffic to use that, and so they kind of go hand in hand. The third item is the general acknowledgement among the experts anyway that we have pretty good north-south corridors, but we are significantly lacking an additional east-west corridor for traffic, whether you're talking about South Provo, Central Provo, or whatever. And the problem is we don't really have many options. In fact, some people's mind there's only one, and that's 820 North, and that's very problematic. It's got a lot of pros and cons, and I'm not sure where that's going to go. I do know there's a lot of discussion with UDOT and others on that, but that's something we ought to be talking about as a committee. It's certainly on the council's mind. Item number 4 is just what we've been going over. It's trying to find the right transportation balance in the city. That, there's no one issue that ought to predominate, but we're looking at private vehicular travel, commercial travel, trucks and so on. We're talking about public transit, we're talking about bikes, pedestrians, and an ever-increasing number of scooters and e-bikes, to try to balance that out on a pragmatic basis is a very challenging thing, and that's where I think this committee can really have some input. Number 5 is prioritizing the Safe Streets Initiative. We have some money for addressing enhanced safety elements in our most accident-prone areas in the city. Gordon knows more about that, and he can give us a status report on where we're at there. I think people pretty much identified where you think the priorities ought to be. Don't know that we've finalized that and allocated funds necessarily to point out.
We'll be talking about that during the budget process, but yeah.
Okay. So that ought to be a subject for this committee. Number 6 is kind of a combination transportation and economic development issue. We have several gateways to the city, and most of them are pretty ugly. But from a beautification perspective, we'd like to enhance, as people enter into our city, which we're so proud of, that first glimpse, that first taste of Provo ought to be a positive one. But I'm speaking particularly to come off I-15 on West Center. There's nothing spectacular about that at all. Same thing with South State Street. We have the northern entrance coming out of Provo Canyon is fairly nondescript, but it's about to be improved significantly. There are some, we have, some of you are familiar with Ryan Smith, who Qualtrics and now the Utah Jazz. We're going to sink a ton of money into computer science and internet-oriented high tech in 100 acres on the west side. University is now kind of barren ground leading up to that power station there. That's going to make a difference, and I think it will synergize some other nice development there. South State Street, I'll have to wave a magic wand over that and get rid of all the wires and the storage units and everything else for economic development purposes, but it's French to some extent. But the planning people, or you're gonna take a really hard look working with Public Works, what kind of creative options we can generate to enhance those gateways, both make them cosmetically more appealing, but also to bring in some worthwhile retail there for expanding the city's tax base, those kinds of.
Sorry. So we're looking at that.
Target.
Well, the South Provo was pretty ecstatic over that.
There's a lot of parents in my neighborhood who were thrilled about that.
I'm thrilled about
Okay,
that.
good. Great.
The people in Grandview are thrilled about
Okay,
that.
The larger issue, of course, is just rehabbing the Provo Town Center Mall. And that's a larger issue, and some things are underway there, and I hope we can kind of a retail ghost town the last few years. We'll see what can be done. As you all know, malls are declining around the country. Bezos and others for that, but to have a successful mall, the consensus is these days you need to make it a destination mall. There needs to be more things attracting you than just some retail shops, restaurants, entertainment, and whatever. And so we have some new owners, relatively new owners, who we can get creative with us. We'll see. I added a number 7 to my list, by the way.
Okay.
Number 7 is Slate Canyon. Right now, it's a high-speed thoroughfare. Real safety issue, and we need to find ways to slow it down, but it's roundabout speed bumps or flashing lights or whatever, it's a hazard. So those are the things that I think I can honestly say are top of mind for the city council right now. And happy to discuss these at any length at future meetings.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I think it's extremely helpful for TMAC to hear what's on the mind of the council. Jeff, and then out of here.
Yeah, I want to add,
Number 8 here.
yeah, so when I came, I was appointed little over 6 months ago now, and you have to go before the council and talk to them and have them approve you. And I asked them directly, what did they want me to focus on, and while I was on TMAC. And pretty quickly, I got an answer that was making Provo safer for women and children to cycle in. And they said women and children. I'm just, like less confident users is what I kind of interpret that as, less confident cyclists, making that safer for them to travel, whether on bike or on foot. And there were several head nods of agreement from other counselors, and that was about all they told me to focus on.
That's absolutely correct. And for me, that's a subset of number 4.
So TMAC members, feel free to ponder this, and we can maybe discuss. My question for our committee is then to say, each of those is a big, difficult issue. What specifically can we do? Is there a question we can answer? Is there some data we can look at? A recommendation we could make to help with those issues? What is our role in those things? That's the question. I would like to get that discussion sometime soon.
I'm planning, we're actively working on the gateway plan right now. So at a later point in time, I would like to bring that to you for gateway. So I can facilitate that once the time comes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Any final anything? Thanks for being here today for a very packed meeting. We appreciate everyone's excellent work, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There'll be full pizza on the table in about 2 minutes.
Yay!
Enjoy the meeting at 2:02. That's not